Father Jason is, well, clearly a priest. He's a Jesuit priest. He is an artist himself, a curator, a lecturer at the Ateneo de Manila University's finance program, and coordinator of the art management program. The art appreciation program. Father Jason did further studies, did his master's in both his art practice and for art management. Eric Zamuco, as you know, is the artist of this show. He has been practicing for some time, 10 years, I guess, for about 30 years. He has been showing with Silverlens for a number of years as well. I first worked with Eric 7 years ago on a show in the Ateneo Art Gallery. He had a one-man show at the Ateneo Art Gallery. So today we thought that we would allow Father Jason and Eric to speak first a little bit about their works and notions of the spiritual in art. Fortunately, Father Jason is a lecturer, so he will start us off with some grounding about art and spirituality.
Maraming salamat. So there are like 3 parts to this discussion. The first one is just to ground our own ideas about the spiritual. Second is some review of literature, especially important exhibitions since 2000 that delve on religious and the spiritual, both global and local, and some samples of my work. We'll start with the working characteristic of what is the spiritual. Okay?
And I borrowed this from Sheldrake, Introduction to Spirituality, okay? In the arts. And he said, and I quote, spirituality refers to the deepest values and meanings by which people seek to live. And I think when we deal with spirituality in this kind of definition, we think of our deepest desires, our deepest needs, our deepest longings, and these longings, dreams, and desires propel us to seek for meaning, especially in our existence, no? And an important artist that tried to affirm art in the spiritual is a German artist,
Ansel Kiefer. And he uses the word negredo. Negredo is
really an idea borrowed from alchemy, when material is turned into gold. Okay? But for Kiefer, he uses the idea of negredo not just for materials to turn objects into gold, but to transform matter into a higher spiritual plane. I'm curious with the title Cosmic Grounds because in a way cosmos is beyond the material, but it grounds you, so there's a tension between the material and the non-material. And Kiefer as an artist is interested in between this material and the immaterial. So he's one of my favorite artists. When we look at the tradition in the Christian faith, because that's my bias, because I'm a Catholic priest, John Paul II has a wonderful letter to artists, okay, in 1999. And seeing the artists as searching. Artists, he said, and I quote, are constantly in search of the hidden meaning of things. And their torment is to succeed in expressing the world of the ineffable. And when I look at the work of Eric, and when we had a tour yesterday, there is this attempt to make sense of things that we cannot understand. And it's a struggle, because there are many things in this world that we call ineffable or mysterious, that we try to understand but our articulations in words, in objects, in art will not suffice. But there are good attempts as a way to make sense and find meaning. And John Paul continued to say that insofar as art seeks the beautiful, because it's a Christian category, okay? For art after the Enlightenment, the category is more of the sublime rather than what is beautiful, okay? For Christian notion, when art is seeking for what is beautiful, the fruit of this imagination, said Pope John Paul II, is to rise above to everyday. Okay? Not just the mundane, but find something special in the mundane. Okay? Art, by its nature, is a kind of appeal to mystery. Okay? Even when they explore the darkest depths of the soul or the most unsettling aspects of evil, artists, according to John Paul II, gives voice in a way to the desire to be saved, to be redeemed, to find meaning in chaos, to order one's life. And in the meeting of the Pontifical Council for Culture, they had a very beautiful document. This was during the time of Pope Benedict XVI. And he proposed to the church, to the Christian world, via pulchritudinis, a way of beauty. For our Christian faith, we're always taught the way to God is through truth. So you speak what is truth, you find what is truth, so that you will find God as the truthful one, or the true. Or the other one is through morality or ethics, you follow what is good. But one aspect, one road that is not ventured much because of the Enlightenment and the disengagement of art in the church, is that the way of beauty. And for the council, they see that the way of beauty is an experience of meeting with beautiful. Okay? Maybe you have an experience of seeing something beautiful and you say, mapawaw ka dun. Or if you see someone beautiful, okay? It arouses certain feelings. Okay? And it can also be a pathway to search for God. Okay? And these are considerations for you when we talk of the spiritual, especially from the point of view of Christianity. Okay? But of course, when we go back to the previous definition, it's actually our deepest longings, our deepest needs, our deepest desires. Okay? And for Christianity, we connect it with God. And there are so many important shows, especially 2000, maybe because it was the end of 2,000 years and there was a lot of uncertainties. And curators and artists is reflecting also of mystery. Okay, what will happen to the world? Okay, and one important exhibition at the National Gallery Britain was Seeing Salvation. What the curator did, instead of representing the life of Christ, he was actually looking for artists who are struggling to represent this divine God who became human. Okay? And the curator is saying that the life of Christ become an archetype for us human persons in our experiences of birth, growing, suffering, loving, and also rising up. Another important show the same year is Apocalypse. This is a second show after Sensation. We know the biggest show, Sensation, because it created Damien Hirst, Tracy In, and the YBA artists. Some critics would comment that Apocalypse was second grade than the Sensation. But there are important works here. For example, the work of Mauricio Catalan at the Royal Academy, where Pope John Paul, the life-size realistic depiction of his figure, is hit by a meteor. It was a very controversial work, but it was part of this apocalypse. And we know Apocalypse is borrowed from the book of Revelation, the end times, the end of the world. And Rosenthal, as a curator, is also reflecting with the artist from the philosophical point of view what it means to live in the beauty and horror of our world. Okay? In America, 4 years before these two major shows in Britain was Negotiating Rapture, 1996. It was curated by Richard Francis at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. And he gathered artists, especially after 1945. We know post-war era was a difficult situation of the world where people grappled with how can people kill each other, not just one person and the other, but in a massive scale. And how do we make sense of being human in this world that we are capable of annihilating each other? Okay? And they put up artists that try to reflect on the situation and longing of what does it mean to be human, and how do we transcend our situation. And they coined the word the sublime. Okay? In here, the works of artists negotiate beyond the common experience in order to approach the realm of the religious. Okay? And the viewers were hoped that in seeing these works, they will regain part of their humanity. Very important artists here would be Anselm Kiefer, Barnett Newman, Bill Viola, Joseph Beuys, even Francis Bacon. Okay? The psycho-emotional struggle of a human person, the struggles with violence and evil. Okay? In Australia, in 2011, much recent, they have this compilation of book entitled The Blake Book, Art, Religion and Spirituality in Australia. Blake Price is a very important book, and they compiled their history for 60 years. And they're not just open to Christianity, but all forms of religion. Any artist exploring even the Aboriginal spirituality, the attempts of people to make sense of the world. Okay? And in the 59th edition of Blake Prize, one of the guests asked, what does that make a work religious? Okay? And one of the founders of the Blake Prize in 1950, who was a Jesuit, sees that it is religious from the point of view of the church when it is firstly helping human beings to progress towards spiritual things, okay? To go deeper into their human spirit, okay? And secondly, as a Jesuit, to praise God through beauty. And the last one, from the global perspective, is a compilation of books, articles from the Greek philosophers that talks about the sublime. Okay, the sublime is the experience of something transcendent, something awe-inspiring, and something that you can represent. Okay, since 1945. And my own take in the idea of the sublime is from the German theologian Rudolf Otto, where he talked about the holy as one's tremendum and the other side is fascination. It's just an experience of being, you are attracted to it, but at the same time you are repelled. Okay? In our discussion yesterday with Greg, with their experiences of Taal, he said that when he saw the ash falling in his ground, he was awed. Wow, na-amaze siya. But at the same time, a few days later, he was terrified because it was accumulating. Okay? So that experience of you're attracted, you're awed, at the same time you are repelled. Okay? Because of its fearsome, because its awesomeness. Okay? And the last one is Art and Religion in the 21st Century. This is recently published in 2015. Okay? I have these resources because I'm also teaching as an elective art and the spiritual. Okay? In the Philippines, I only found one in contemporary times that dealt with the religious is the traveling show organized and created by Valentine Willie in 2000. It's a survey of contemporary Filipino art, but the first chapter talks about Faith and the Pinoy, written by Emmanuel Torres. Okay. So that's the first two parts, certain groundings, some ideas about the spiritual, and some important exhibitions in the world, and one in the Philippines. So this is the dreaded part, talking about my work. When I was a young priest in Cebu City, I started with a project called Bottled Memories. It's inspired by how people remember their dead. And instead of just writing the names of the dead, I requested the parishioners to put mementos and made this bottled receptacle of their memories, and then we had testimonies of their beloved dead so that we can share. And in 2007, it was invited in Madrid during the World Youth Day 2011 for a contemporary Christian art show. And the last work with regards to bottled memories was in CCP, Testimony of What Remains. Okay? I made these installations of bottles of people who are not personally remembered. Okay? And part of that installation was this work at the atrium, which I took at the Careta Cemetery in Cebu. I just stood there and then I felt surreal because the dead and the living were in the same space. And when I went to the UK for my graduate studies, my thesis was on death and memory, because at the middle of my studies, my father died. I had a complete thesis already that engages the different seasons with the liturgical season, but my father died. So I went home in Medina. It's a small coastal town in northern Mindanao. And one of the installations in that exhibition was a homage to my father, where I have an altar, because in Chinese Filipinos we have an altar for our beloved dead. Okay? It's part of our ancestral veneration. And opposite it is a video of a woman doing the 40 days novena. And on the altar you have objects, picture of my father, some offerings. You have to offer incense, fruits, and wine, and some objects related to my father and to the clan. Okay? I got a message from a friend of mine, another Jesuit, who I found very consoling. I asked for permission if I can print and his text. And it's a text that talks about, I'm standing with you in grief, because his dad died a week before, and my father and his father were just 1 year apart. And it is a photograph and text that talks about standing with each other in grief. Okay? We wake our father and we're preparing for fiesta. That was during May time. And we would go to the feria because we love circus as kids. But when we came back for the wake of my father, feria has a different feel. And these are series of photographs I took in the feria. And the title is The Circus Came to Town When We Buried Our Father. Okay? This is a set of 9 photographs. So So there's this melancholic, nostalgic feel to the photographs amidst the merrymaking in the town. It's just, I don't know, maybe the pain is highlighted because of this merrymaking. Another installation is social media. I screen grab on my page different sharings of people for 40 days, and the piece is entitled "When 40 Days Sojourn in the Desert Are Not Enough." Okay? And sample photographs, screen grab, just to real that you are celebrating your funeral, and then some friends are celebrating a birthday, anniversary. So parang the cycle of life is blurred in social media. And the last installation is my own reflection of my relationship with my father. This is a photograph of our hometown where we have the ancestral house where he grew up, and the other one where I grew up. And it talks about his father, his own father. And my father is a kind of person that deals with ordinary people. This is a photograph in their company. And the family is the family business is really like what you call that, coconut, okay, copra. And these photographs are reflections of how my father is related to his father, to his elder brothers, and me as his son. And this is my homily, which I created. And I don't know, as a priest, you also celebrate your dad's wake and funeral. And there was one wake that I just tied to the homily, and my aunties wanted to come up to the altar and watch my tears. It was so dramatic. And the last one is this photograph, the only photograph I took in the UK of myself. It's a shadow, but I was more fascinated with the light surrounding my shadow. It's in a light box. Okay? And the last one is, most of my works are not exhibited because they are very personal to me. This, for example, this one is a fruit of my retreat. These are photographs and text. And the last project was in Bukidnon, where I had my 8-day retreat, and after 8 days I took photographs of the sky, and I was commissioned to do the ceiling of the church, consisted of the 8 days and the 8 skies that I have photographed. Okay? And it's an invitation for both the indigenous people and the local people in Bukidnon that we are under the same sky, regardless of our religion, race.
So I'm just going to talk about my practice. How selfish. Really appreciate that that context for spiritual art was, I think, something that I really wanted to do, like with this talk, was actually talk to these two people, because I think with your own practice, you don't really have anybody to talk to sometimes, right? Like if you're not in a university setting with colleagues and art and practicing artists. So to start, this I was exposed to this artist's work in 2002, and just a catalog, and I was really drawn to his work because he practiced his faith. He was Buddhist, and he also he was socially aware, and he made commentary on Thai society and its loss of faith, and he also made very compelling personal work, which was about making these healing spaces for his wife who had cancer. And so he made these structures. It's a structure of a stupa. It's like at the tip of a temple in Thailand, and he would put these herbal medicines so that the audience would come in and have a different experience and smell these healing spices. I'd like to say like I'm sort of it's like I can't say it's like a template for what I do, but I do make work that respond to circumstances, and I filter that by making my artworks, and at the same time, and oftentimes using my own personal spirituality as my lens. So this is so that was 2002, and this is 2003, and the direct influence from Temple of the Mind, Sabbath of the Mind, and this is my work at the 13 Artist Awards, and it's a different experience. I also wanted them to step and experience and smell, but smell the damp and burnt debris from 36 sacks of the charred remains of our ancestral home. So, and with this work, I think the question really is like, where is wisdom in loss? And so I entitled it Light Afflictions because light meaning trifle or momentary, afflictions meaning pain. So I had also a chance to, my wife and I moved to Missouri. This was my first installation work at the University of Missouri for my grad school. And this is entitled Sacred Raiment, and I'm using here dog treats. And this is to reference our dog eater status that was born from the 1904 World's Fair at the St. Louis, Missouri, and St. Louis, Missouri. And I manipulated these rawhide and made them look like parts of a garment, a jacket with buttons, and then also maybe, well, not in this picture, but like a top hat or part of a boot, or like an embroidered cloth. And I installed it this way because it's kind of like a shrine to our, Filipinos longing to go to another land and for economic prosperity. And when I was making this work, I found that the parallel to these indigenous people and lowlanders who volunteered, because most of them were volunteered to go to these exhibit at the World's Fair and to be exhibited in these human dioramas. But they did that because they were promised money. Okay? And so I saw that parallel to my own reason for migration. And I think and found that fine line, or maybe warned myself of that fine line between total materialism and, making a living. This is City of Man. We lived in Columbia, Missouri, and it's a city of 70,000 people at that time. So I was looking for a picture of a larger city. So I made a city out of these plastics from all these garage sales that my wife and I would go to because it's cheap furniture and stuff like that. And so, but clearly it's about ideas about home, and then it poses questions about, let's see, where is home, and is it a place that you go to? Is it a place that you bring with you? Is it within you? So you can see like how I'm responding to several unfamiliar experiences, and so this is another one of those, and this is What's Up Brownie, and this is a video still of a compilation of jumping photographs, wherein I received this racial slur in this spot, okay, and there was this guy in a pickup and eating a sandwich, and syempre memoryado ko kayo, Dodge pickup, tapos he shouted at me, and there's really nothing like a racial slur and receiving that makes you feel so displaced and detached from a place and environment that you wanted to call your own. Yeah. And so you officially are tagged, or even you tag yourself, and you officially become a stranger. And I think part of the spiritual manifestation in my work is really like finding that connection with Scripture, and sometimes I do that. It's not often, but and so allow me to read what was made so real to me when these things happen. Right? So I'm reading, having confessed, and this is a statement by Paul, of Tarsus. Having confessed that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. For those who say such things make it clear that they are seeking a country of their own. And indeed, if they had been thinking of that country from which they went out, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is a heavenly one. And so, it was made so real that I was in that world, but also made so real that I am not of it. So that video ballooned to 83 photographs of myself in these, ordinary locations, and my feet are not touching the ground, and just to visualize that detachment. And so, just as the scriptures said, we had opportunity to return, and we did, and in the opportunity to return, even when we say we call it our home, the home impulse keeps on, because we come home to calamities. This is called private pool. And this is almost not, and we come home to having a murderous government. And on a personal level, we come home and experience also sickness. Now, this is part of the work here, and this is actually a thermoplastic cast for my wife. because she has to be mobilized so that the radiation therapy would be accurate. Okay. And so you see how weirdly and strangely how my first influence and now this. And so, yeah, this was the catalyst for this show, and that's when I did my walks and how these objects sort of found me, and the walks were initially escape, and then they were it's good exercise, you realize, and then next it was a meditative process, calming process. And what I would do was, I would go to, I'd find these flowers and grass and leaves, and I would just arrange them. And then if I had a camera, I'd take a picture. If not, I'd just walk, and then I move on to the next maybe object. And I think again, when you start making something, there's that spiritual connection that I mean it's already there, and it sparks it in your mind and in your heart. And, I'm reminded of this passage, which is about considering the wildflowers. Have to consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. And so if that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and gone tomorrow, how much more will he clothe you? So I make the work to find these connections. Connections to a hopeful, spiritual reality. And the process is, like we said earlier, it's a kind of ordering, and it is renewing, and it's redempting. So yeah.
For those that have, thank you for sharing where you started, starting from your hard work. And for those that have seen the show, I think what comes across quite strongly, at least in the material of your work, is deterioration, decay, brokenness. There's a lot of broken materials that you've taken and used as material for your artwork. One gets the sense that you are grappling with these issues in your work. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, for sure. Because I was actually it wasn't just my wife. I also like have a heart condition, and so that's the awareness of like what it says in the text of human frailty. So I was
I guess it was also providential that they, of course, neighbors just will always throw broken stuff, and so I was drawn to them, and just like any circumstance that you ask yourself, okay, what's it for? And then can I fix this? And so that was like, okay, maybe I can fix this way. Because when things like that happen, you feel like you want to be in control, right? And so you want to fix. you want to save this object and make this new.
I think one of the things that I find really interesting about the work that you did is that you wanted to fix and redeem, as you said, it's redemptive. You took the objects, but you didn't attempt to make them what they were again. There was kind of a transformation in what the materials were. Father Jason, you mentioned earlier in your presentation, alchemy, about how things are transformed into something else. And in this case, I thought it was very interesting how you transformed like the pillar that is normally in the church, you'll see it in there. How something that was once so strong and held up the ceiling or the roof, or was structural support for something, has now decayed and is itself being held up by something else. It becomes lighter rather than that which is the foundation. And you've done that with other things like the bench and where you change their function and their meaning completely. Was this part of the thought process? And Father Jason and I were talking about the vase which you reconstructed. Maybe Father Jason, you could share a little bit about your reflections on the vase with the broken vase with the flowers.
Yeah. You mentioned about brokenness and how creativity becomes a way to repair. Maybe another way is looking at it as a way of healing. And I think that is best exemplified in the vase that you've discovered that was broken and you repaired it. And you had these growths in them to suggest there is life in this brokenness. But it reminded me of Japanese way of fixing broken pottery. And when they're fixed and they are covered with gold lining, the brokenness is highlighted, but it's not anymore the pain, it's really the victory of going through that struggle and being triumphant and becoming whole again. But of course, there's always a possibility of being broken again.
I guess that's correct. And the fact that I did not restore, is also connected to I wanted them to be new. Another form, it was also like with these pieces, not all of them will have a specific meaning. It's just the fact that there's an effort to redeem and to change. Just that process for me was very important.
I know you said that not everything has a meaning. So can you tell us a little more about the ground of the work, the black and yellow, platforms that everything stands on?
From when I go to work, which is where I used to teach, I've seen this pile of asphalt shingles, and so sometimes you're as an artist, even for this batch of these works, and I'm looking at them, and then I don't really. I only decide to pick them up and bring them home when I sort of see, okay, this is potential, artwork. Like the same for the shingles, it was only a few months ago, even though I've seen that for 2 years. I decided to use it because really has a few readings, you know, and it's asphalt, it's sand, and also, of course the yellow is like street marking, and it's roofing. So that those I like that because it's home, it's also pathway, it's also islands, it's also, you know, yeah, so that's also important, so that there's just, no, not just one this interpretation for it.
I'd just like to comment that the act of finding these objects, as we discussed yesterday, so we have, I don't know, artists have a habit of collecting things. I'm even called a magpie. I have a small room in a residence that I keep accumulating and hoping to use them in the future. But I think I gained an insight from Osorio when he had an exhibit as part of art fair. And he was, the quotation there was, Osorio was actually not finding this object, he was seeking for this object. So these objects are sought for objects because deep within there's a certain internal resonance with the object. You find them precisely because you are seeking them. And maybe it's not yet in the level of consciousness, but unconsciously these objects have inner resonance. That's why we collect them. And maybe, perhaps for your case, these objects are collected because there's an inner resonance. And maybe when you're able to articulate what that is, then it becomes something.
Yeah, right. Like the resonance is the brokenness and how that parallels circumstance and uncontrollable circumstance, but an inevitable decay.
I wanted to ask both of you, because clearly in your practices there is a strong element of trying to process something, but in whether it's sickness or in the case the death of your father, it's trying to process elements of the human condition, difficult elements that you're going through in your lives. And in this sense, it seems like it's a spiritual exercise and activity for you personally. Do you want this, like when you're doing your work, is it, do you want to be able to convey this sense of the spiritual also to your audiences, or is it really more on a way for you to deal with it on your own?
I think when I did a show, To Walk in the Shadow of the Valley of Death, it was really more of a personal struggle and how creativity becomes a way to process one. So the primary audience is maybe mainly yourself, and it helped me also that there's also other people going through maybe similar experiences, so that they can resonate with what's happening. Because when it's exhibited, there is now the responsibility of artists to show it to the public. That's why most of my works, especially in my sketchbooks, in my retreats, they are just in my archives. Okay.
No, that's a good question, and I guess it's both. It's dealing with it, and also the processing is I guess it's you, like I mentioned earlier, like I want that spiritual connection because that's a way to transcend any difficult situation. And sometimes there's no clear, answer. Um, the mere fact that one is creating, it's already, I wouldn't say, sometimes it's just cathartic, but sometimes it's actually, already.
No, I just like to point out that maybe when it's exhibited in public, as you mentioned yesterday while we are touring the exhibition, the sense of quietness that we allow the audience to consider these things. No? Maybe these things will speak to them deeply, maybe not, okay? Depending on the level of their experience. But quietness is very important in order to be present to these objects, because sometimes it's difficult to access the meaning because it's personal. But there's also the other side that sometimes the personal, because it's so personal, other people can also relate to that level.
I think that is one of the things that I really appreciate about this show, and your use of found object. Because there's something about all the objects here in the show that that you recognize. You know what they are, so they give you an in right away to the show. They give you something to grasp. It's not like sometimes looking at an abstract thing, they can be daunting for people because they're not sure what they're supposed to be looking at. But in this case, you're looking at I'm not sure, it's a bird. You're looking at a broken bird, you're looking at a broken statue, you're looking at all these things that you kind of recognize, but they're broken and they've been transformed. And, as Father Jason was saying, what I appreciated about it is that the show puts you in a quiet space. It's the way it's set up, the way it's lit, everything puts you in a quiet space where you're able to really take the time and look at the elements of each object and come up with your own meanings for it. And I think in that sense, for the audience, that kind of puts you in, I don't know if I would say spiritual, but I guess in a space of contemplation or meditation, which would, I guess, be more spiritual, more spiritual, or at least more otherworldly or contemplative thoughts. I think what I found striking also about both your presentations is that they were the objects themselves that you showed, both of you, were not overtly Christian or Catholic in imagery. Like even Father Jason's work, they're very much images of the everyday or the outside world, and yours as well. But both of you, most obviously for Father Jason, but also you, Eric, seem to be very grounded in your faith. How do you feel that affects your practice that you're seeking to do? What the questions for
So I think it's a gift, but also it's a burden. Being a priest is a grace, but sometimes it's a burden because in the Philippine society, you always carry this authority figure, and it's a challenge because my own starting point is really the human connection. So when I go to the area, I don't really like to wear my clerical shirt because I just want to be me in relation to other people. It's only later on that it's also a priest, it's an artist, but it's important that we deal as persons. And it's a struggle because if I'm aware of that burden of that authority, especially in the Philippines, some people also would like you to play that role. So you have to struggle. But later on, when you develop that kind of friendship with people that we deal as persons, then it's not anymore that I'm superior because I have this I'm a ordained person, but I'm just me. So it's a struggle. That's why in my works I try to, the starting point is always the human encounter, the human situation. Because I don't want to be preachy. Maybe in our dealings with each other, they can learn something and find Christ.
I think I'd like to respond with your comment about that the objects aren't particularly specific or, let's say, Christian imagery, and maybe except for the votive or the pillar, but I think we are also talking about, we talked about how parables work yesterday, and how parables are, used regular and ordinary things to speak of very, spiritual things.
This is very theological. I think there's an idea in the church called the idea of sacraments. But maybe we know of sacraments as the 7 sacraments. But there's also a sacrament with a small s. The sacrament of the everyday. When you see the everyday, that they're infused with certain uniqueness, specialness, and sacredness. Okay? And I think when we have that kind of seeing that things are imbued with something other than what you see, then you have an insight into that object, okay? Into that person, into that thing. Okay? And I think that's the beauty of sacrament. Hindi lang siya yung 7 sacraments, but how objects, persons are imbued with that specialness. And an artist is able to see that specialness. And when you look at it, meron pala. There are little details that we see. And those details are, they make it special.
And I think that those are that is part of the artist's role also in mediating what he sees in those objects, and allowing others who wouldn't normally see that to focus their attention on it and be able to see it. Thank you for having us.